There's general lights.
Just give me once. Yes. Let me know when you're ready to eat. Okay, while you're doing that, let me just first welcome you here to Madison this morning. Congratulations on making it to this step. We're excited to see you and hear from your firm. As I indicated in the invitation, you'll have 30 minutes for a presentation, and then we'll follow it up with 15 minutes of questions and answers. I will give somebody a 5-minute sign, so I'm not giving you a high five, waving to you. That means you got 5 minutes. We do want to try and stay on schedule because we do have 5 interviews today, and we don't want to stack them up too much. We're going to start by introducing ourselves, and then when we're done with our team, I'll turn it over to you all to start your presentation, or we'll start it whenever the technical glitch is out. Okay? So again, my name is Madison with Colliers, project leaders for the owners reps for the project. And with me,
Judy Denny, I'm the assistant project manager for this project.
Joe Paradiso, town resident and sitting on the building committee.
And Kelly, town resident, sitting on the building committee.
Good morning, Erin Mannix, Town Planner.
Bill McMinn, Director of Facilities. Welcome.
Joe Valentine, resident and also chair of the committee.
Dave Sprague, a resident and the vice chair of the committee.
Joan Walker, member of the building committee.
AJ Miller, also member.
Eileen Davis, Building Committee.
And we're taping this. I think the only person on this is I think Jacqueline, our note keeper. So just so you know, for future, we're going to post this, I think, publicly somewhere.
Yeah, later after the whole process so that the community can see that this was an open, because it's 9 o'clock in the morning, a lot of members of the community can't be here, so.
okay.
And this is a public meeting.
Great, yeah, thank you, everybody. We are Silver Petroselli and Associates. My name is David Stein. I'm a principal with the firm.
Dean Petroselli, principal architect.
Ken Eldridge, Chief Mechanical Engineer. Paul Jorgensen, Project Manager, Architect.
Will Walter, I'm a professional engineer with Alfred Benish and Company. We're sub-consultants to Silver Petrocelli for site civil.
So Silver Petroselli and Associates, we are celebrating our 32nd year in service, working through Connecticut municipalities throughout the state. We are just under a 50-person architectural engineering and interior design firm. So as we like to describe ourselves, we are an integrated practice, which is, I think, fairly unique, in which, as you see, the services that you have in front of you, which is architects, engineers, that's mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, which is a good part of this overall project. Interior design, dedicated construction administrators, so people that truly come from the construction background. We also have a building official and fire marshal as part of our team. So through those 32 years of service, the group that we've assembled, at least today, are the principals of the firm and the leadership of the firm that will be working on your project. We are large enough to do the work that you see, but we're small enough that we actually manage the project. So the people that are here for this presentation today are the ones that you will be seeing and actually will be doing the work. So we have assembled as myself as sort of principal in charge. Dean will talk more as the senior project architect. Paul Jorgensen will be your project manager, and Ken, as he said, is our chief mechanical engineer who will manage the mechanical engineering group. That sort of rounds out with Will Walter on the civil piece from Madison, and we'll talk a bit about that. And we've also have Michael Horton Associates on the structural piece and D'Agostino to round out the technology and those components that will go into the electronic portion of the building. This is just a sample, and Dean will get a bit deeper dive into the work that we have done, but this is really just an array of projects that are very similar to yours. Adaptive projects where schools have been decommissioned and converted into senior centers, municipal offices, community centers. So we're gonna demonstrate that sort of core experience. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dean.
Let you control.
You bet.
Good morning. As you can see, well, I'll try to stand here, not the block views. As Dave said, we've done a lot of conversion of schools into municipal or community. Upper left in Middletown, Eckersley Hall, which was an abandoned school that was converted over to a new senior/community center. Nathan Hale Ray middle school became a municipal office. currently working in Farmington, lower right, at their high school, which they're building a new high school, and we're taking the old high school and converting the 1928 portion of that into a new municipal center. And then Hemingway School in Watertown, we just completed that about a year and a half ago. It was about a 3-year project. Again, another abandoned school, a dormant school that was converted into their main municipal offices. As I said, Middletown, Eckersley Hall, this won a lot of awards. We had lead components. We touched everything in terms of the building, the site. It was a historic building, so we had a lot of historic elements that we wanted to incorporate. We had some artwork that you're seeing on the right side, some really cool tile of the original kindergarten fireplace on the left side that was restored. You can see we kept the original motif and design of the windows. So again, a lot of historical components of this building that we wanted to kind of carry through. But you can see some of the spaces of what was mostly classrooms that were converted into billiards areas, meeting rooms on the lower left, a kitchen area. We did inject a new commercial kitchen as part of that renovation, as you see in that photo. And obviously, between interior and exterior space, we had some exercise room, we had outside spaces for bocce, and again, some billiard spaces throughout the facility. In East Haddam, we took another facility, another school that was converted into town offices. This is the final image, but again, some historic components of this building, like yours, that were restored, maintained. Again, we had some historic government artwork that was at the front lobby that we restored and maintained as part of that. Surely some architectural detailing and some of the built-in casework on the upper right. Multi-purpose rooms are always part of these community centers, and just finding the square footage and the appropriate rooms to convert into those. And you can just see some of the unique spaces that were created in terms of the town history display, the old records vault that we kept in place, and again, just utilizing as much of the existing building as we could. Watertown Hemingway, another total conversion of what was a former school, sat dormant for 15 plus years, and then we came in. We had some very early concepts of all their different departments. The town had town hall in 2 different buildings scattered around town, and they wanted to consolidate and bring everybody into this one building, including public works. We had parks and rec, and then all of the town hall functions. Again, we kept a lot of the original casework and displays that were down the main corridor, as you're seeing in this shot. We just converted it all into kind of a historical application. Town council chambers, obviously new MEP systems, and Ken will talk about that, so I won't steal his thunder. We're currently working, converting the Farmington 1928 high school as they're building their new high school. We're looking just to restore the original building. The town did vote at referendum to keep this building up, so they want to keep the original 28 building. And we're looking to convert that into community space. This is a project that's actually in design as we speak, unlike the 3 previous that have since been completed. Colchester Senior, one just finished bidding, starting construction. We've been on this for the past year. A brand new facility for Colchester, creating new community and senior center space. Just some of the aerial views that we create, the digital views that we create through our design teams. Woodbridge Center School and Cultural, we're touching virtually 3 buildings on campus. We're renovating all 3 of them as we speak. This is another one that is in design as we are currently speaking here today. Go ahead, Dave. Senior center renovations on one of the buildings, and just some of the interior work that our crew did in terms of finishes and furniture. The community center in Cromwell was another study that is proceeding. So this was just some of our initial block diagram from programming. So we go through this programming stage and then obviously develop floor plans to execute that. These are just some of the original or some of the initial site developments. A few years back, we completed the Oxford Community Center. This was another standalone, brand new facility. And just some of the spaces in terms of multi-purpose space, some of the quilting spaces that were created in the upper right. With that, I get to Ken.
Thanks, Steve. You didn't steal any of my thunder, by the way. I think the thunder is the stuff that you said there. As far as this building is concerned, there's very little mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, thunder. But we do want to make sure that we bring this thing into a new century, because we're reusing the building. It's one of the most sustainable things you can do. And so what we're going to do is try to bring it to the current mindset. Electrification of the grid is a big talking point nowadays. And all that means is that we're going to try and make electrical, VRF, DOAS, these types of systems incorporated into your program. And so what we'll do is we'll sit down with your groups, your facility staff, and people who are going to be running the building, and we'll talk them out, and make sure that we are covering all the grounds that want to be accomplished in this particular project. PV is a big thing that we could incorporate, and daylight harvesting. Heat pump water heaters is a fairly new item that is becoming something that's sustainable and useful in these types of renovations. So you can see that we've had lead on many of the projects that we've worked on, and we have several lead certified staff on board. And then the different programs that we have will coordinate with different utilities and state agencies that will bring funding in terms of radiates initiatives and make sure that that is realized in the construction of the project. Over to you, Paul.
Thanks, Ken. Good morning, everyone. Paul Jorgensen, again, project manager, architect for Silver Petroselli. I don't have a lot of the great pictures that the front slides lead off with, but really what we're all about is service. As project manager, we provide the service to you, to the end users of the building. We obviously survey the building. We go through the program of what all the spaces that you want for the building and what the best combination or adjacencies will be for the building. We look through the code to make sure that as this is adaptive reuse, we are bringing it up to current code. You can see we've gone through many historic buildings in the past. I'm one of two historic registered architects with the state of Connecticut. Bill Silver and myself are registered with the state for historic preservation. We'll go through the condition of the building and generate the base plans. We work with those base plans and also with your program, and we usually develop the service matrix of the different things that the building needs. So we want to go through the condition of the building, and we'll prioritize all of the things that the building needs, from the structure through the utilities, et cetera. Example of a lot of the programming we do, which is simply going through your needs and putting square footages and adjacencies to that. So we'll do that as part of our service. Controlling the budget, that's one of those challenging areas these days with inflation and spikes in pricing and supply chain. So we're always looking for efficiencies on how we work with you on the budget and how the project is scheduled. Estimating is something that we do in-house, the engineers and the architects, the interiors. So we will develop the estimates, not just once, but during the course of the project. So early on, we'll be working with you in schematic design on early estimates to see where we can work with that. We develop them during design development and also at the end of the project. These are some examples. Stern Hall is the white historic building that we worked on in Milford for the city of Milford. You can see the estimating that we did was very close on all of these examples. Our estimating in-house, we're very proud of how close we get to those final bid numbers. It's increasingly difficult this year, but we're still able to use our estimating and really target in on what the budget should be. And with that, I'll turn it back to you.
So I've walked through this building multiple times. It needs a lot in terms of its fit and finish. As Ken said, the mechanical systems are gonna be virtually gutted. You know, we bring our mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers to these presentations because, believe it or not, they're gonna take up about 50% of your budget. Half of your money is gonna be spent behind the walls and above the ceilings, heating, cooling, and lighting, and providing water to your building. So it's a huge part of the budget. And it's something that clients don't always necessarily relate to, you know. You're always looking for an architect, but you should be looking for an engineer too, because they're gonna consume as much of your budget as we architects are gonna. So I've walked through the building, I've seen its condition, it's in poor condition. Obviously, it's been dormant for 19 years now, and it shows, it hasn't been heated or cooled. Virtually the doors have been shut, and the water shut off, and the heating and cooling shut off, and as you can imagine, it needs a lot. I'm worried about your budget, as I'm always worried about our client's budget, as Paul talked about, though, in these challenging times and what we've seen in terms of estimation. If you're gonna ask us the question of what's our biggest challenge, I'll tell you right now what our biggest challenge is gonna be. You prepared estimates a few years ago, the price of materials and equipment these last few years has really skyrocketed. So we're seeing it on every project. Managing the budget and aligning it with your program will be the biggest challenge on this project. We've looked at the program that was established, is what you're seeing here. We don't have any issues with it. We don't, sure we don't see any red flags, but as Paul talked about, we'll want to start with reprogramming, making sure nothing has changed since the last time this building was programmed. I assume some programs are going to tweak slightly, as they always do. You know, it's a process and it'll change up until the point that it's built. But generally speaking, the plans that were developed is what will be our starting point. And then we want to obviously challenge you in making sure that it's all inclusive and it has all the components and pieces and the parts that you're looking for, making sure the adjacencies, meaning what rooms want to be next to each other, are where they need to be. And again, we assume there's going to be some retooling, so a few steps backwards, and that's all part of that initial schematic phase. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Will, and then I'll be back in a minute. But he and I talked through this site quite a bit, walked the site quite a bit to really understand it, and we think we have some pretty neat initial ideas, at least to be cost conscious and deliver what you folks are looking for.
Great, thanks, Steve. Yeah, so regarding the site, the building sits on a beautiful town property. It's about 4 acres, several town buildings, there's some green space, some fields. It has a lot of potential just to be just a fantastic town property that becomes very, very vibrant. Next slide, please. So there's several things that we're looking at on the site that I'll briefly touch on. First, has already been touched on, is cost. We want to control the budget, so we've sought to see what we can do without impacting those fields. I mean, if we have to relocate fields and backstops, that's $500,000 right there. So we're seeking to maintain the fields as they are. The other thing that we know we have to do is the septic system. There's an existing septic system, but let's face it, you're not going to spend millions of dollars on a new renovation and keep a 100-year-old septic system. So we're going to have to put a new septic system. We envision it's up there as number 5. I've got some preliminary soils data. It looks to be pretty good soils out there. So we'll certainly need a new septic system. The other is parking. We'll work with you folks, with the stakeholders, with Erin and her staff. How many parking spaces are truly needed? We'll create some formalized parking. We're showing it right here coming off Meeting House Lane. We'll have to relocate a basketball court, which we'll look to do in the upper left out there outside the limits of that softball field. But we'll make some nice parking. And then the other thing that we really want to take a look at is what we call placemaking. So we're showing with 2 and 8. We really want to make this a place that people want to gather, that they want to come have a cup of coffee. They can, they can go to town hall. They can sit out there afterwards. It's beautiful with some plaza space, maybe some flowering plants, things like that. So we'll get into all that, but we really want to make this a vibrant space that people would love to come to.
In terms of conceptual design, we start at a conceptual level at what we call schematics, as we are initially taking your thoughts and programs and then carrying them through. So we're gonna start this project by looking at some initial designs from a site standpoint, but also from a building standpoint, and then carrying it through. We're currently working in New London on a $32 million community rec center that is just starting construction. So we've gone through documents, design documents and approvals and bid. Downs is the CM on it and it is currently just starting construction. These were just some of the images that have been generated not only in New London, but other community centers. So we have the capability of three-dimensional imagery in terms of the interior, the exterior, the finishes. We have an interior design group of 5 that kind of select the materials and the color palettes and look at the slip and fall resistance of materials. So they really specialize in those interior components. And these are just some of the tools that SB&A uses to convey, not only for ourselves, but obviously for you, the client, to understand what you're getting before you actually get it. So these tools are really valuable for both you, us, and your CM, who's going to be helping estimate the project.
Great. Paul, could you grab the 11 by 17 schedules that are there? So, or Dave, if you could grab them, hand them out. So we'll close. It looks like we're coming right up on our 20-minute timeline. So want to think perfect timing to close. As we mentioned, budget drives schedule, schedule drives your budget. So we need to be mindful of that. What Dean is handing out right now is a schedule that we did submit as part of our packet, but it just, if anything, we want to demonstrate to you that we look at each individual task and try to plan ahead your process. Now, we haven't had an opportunity to meet with you and review this in detail, but if anything, it starts to show you how we are as planners and how we plan that process moving forward. So that's key. Quality of the work and quality of your architect that you're choosing is key. Paul talked about and showed some examples of projects that were smaller in scale, but some that were really right within your budget, such as that East Haddam project, in which the quality of our documents were indicated in those bid plans and those bids came in on budget. So it all starts with the quality of the work and the documents we do. Our sort of secret sauce in all of that is we are an integrated practice. Having those engineers, those interior designers all in-house, not as consultants, is really our recipe to be able to work together. And obviously working together for a long period of time. The majority of us have been working together for 15, 20 years. We are very proud of our consistency of our team throughout the years, and you could ask sort of around the communities to sort of demonstrate that the case. So quality control, it all starts again with the principals of the firms are the ones that are actually doing this work. So that last check that as that project set goes out, we all have our eyes on the quality of that. We wanted to demonstrate, and I know in 20 minutes there's a lot to talk about, but just historic preservation, as Paul mentioned, he is a historic registered architect. There are not many of those in the state of Connecticut. And these are just some of the awards just in Bramford. You may be familiar with the Blackstone Library that we renovated. We're very proud of that project, and that obviously received a Historic Preservation Award. Just again, we showed you another example. This is the Middletown project. The budget was $5.1 million. Our bids came in at $4.6 million, and you saw the cost per square foot. The overall change orders were 3.6%, and that's the total change orders. That's not just the unforeseen change orders. It also includes just added value by the contractor. So we're really proud of this project. It was a LEED Silver project, and to be able to sort of do that at the time for $377 a square foot, we're very proud of. So you asked the question in your thing, why choose Silver Petroselli? This is actually the last slide that we typically have on our presentation. And I said it before, the owners, the principals, we are the one managing the project. It's not just delegated to there obviously is a team behind us and with us that do that work. We've demonstrated our just core in-depth knowledge of adaptive reuse. That is most of the work that Silver Petroselli does. is renovations, additions, modifications, rehabilitations to buildings. Yes, we have new projects, and you saw two examples of them, one in New London and one in Colchester, but the bulk of our work is renovation work that's really centered around good, sensible design. Okay, that's really what we try to practice. Sustainability, as Ken mentioned, can be achieved in many ways. Mechanical systems will help, but this building is going to need a fully re-insulated envelope, and that's probably the best bang for your buck, is to re-insulate this building, and so forth. And lastly, as we've said from the beginning of our presentation, I think what's unique about us is just our integrated practice and that approach to adaptive reuse projects. So with that, thank you. We'll turn it back over to you for questions and answers.
We're going to open it up for questions. I wasn't going to take the first question. I was going to take the last question. Among the members of the committee, I'll look to my right first and go around. I see Dave has a question, so I'll recognize it first.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Quick question, just to elaborate a little bit, we were discussing quality control. Can you give us a little more information about during construction, what quality control measures you can use?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have dedicated construction administrators, as I mentioned in one of our first slides. They come directly from the construction background, so they have architectural training, but they're unique and they come directly from the construction industry. So our oversight will be on weekly meetings in which we will participate in with the construction administrator. Behind the scenes, there's obviously shop drawings that are reviewed, but probably one of the most important things is just cost control of change orders, applications, and just financial oversight on the project. And that's where I'll turn it over to Paul, comes in as the project manager, will lead that all the way through and be part of the construction process. So.
Sure. As Dave said, we do review not only change orders or proposals, RFIs that are coming in, questions from the contractors, but we're following the project financials during the course of construction. So we're overseeing the contractors' payment applications and really keeping a close eye on the progress of the project that way. So that's how we ensure, in terms of the budget, the control over the project that way. And then, of course, our eyes and ears on the ground on weekly visits. Punch lists, usually our CA people are reaching back to the engineers in the office, the architects, to come out for field visits as well. So we will have supplemental visits from the project architects and engineers during different milestones of the project.
So the project isn't necessarily just handed off to the construction administrators. The design architect and the design engineers are the ones actually also doing the site visits and looking at the quality control to make sure that certain elements that were intended to be designed are there. So the quality control is also being taken into account by and responsible for by those engineers of record and those architects of record.
Just a quick follow-up. So how often will we see you on site during construction?
Well, it depends. Easily on a weekly basis, we will be attending that. Obviously, that changes in terms of the flow of the work. When we get heavy into roughing, major milestones, the entire group will come out, such as roughing, finish installation, so forth. But it could start.
I'll be a little more blunt. We budget a once per week visit for our team. That doesn't mean all the work that's going on in the office in terms of shops and requisitions and change orders, that's all behind the scenes. But the reality is if the contractor calls us up and we were there yesterday and they want us there tomorrow, we never say no. So the reality is we always lose on CA. It's just the nature of our business, but it's more important that we get the job done and we get the job done right. So we don't even like to have the conversation of, can we afford another visit? The answer is you will get the visits that are required out of us. If the contractor calls us out 3 times next week, we will be there 3 times. Whatever it takes to get the job done. Construction is the most critical part of the process. We understand that. Our integrated team, and we talk about that word integrated, it means our engineers are under our roof. They are employed by us. We don't have to send shops across the state to another firm, and we don't have to wait for them to get out of vacation and get back to us. We are managing our staff because they're all under our roof, which really helps expedite the paperwork, the change orders, the shop drawings, when there's an issue with a change, and shop drawings always bring up changes and little tweaks that need to happen, and I have to tweak a mechanical system or a piece of piping to make that happen. I can just walk over to Ken's desk and his group, and we can make that change. So again, having that all in-house, we can't stress enough how we think it's critical. And as Dave calls it, our secret sauce, it really does set us apart. There's only 2 firms in the state that are quality me, and we're the largest of those.
And I may have talking quickly, but we have an office in Camden, we have an office in London, so just being sort of equal distance, we're virtually a half hour either direction, depending on which staff may be coming back and forth between any of those 2 offices. So I think proximity is going to play a good part to, if the contractor calls and said, hey, could you show up in an hour? We're close by to do so.
Thank you. Joan, you'll be next. You have questions you'd like?
Yes, so what do you view some of the challenges and the opportunities with this project? We already know that you listed the biggest challenge, which is obviously budget and supply chain and things like that. But above and beyond that piece of it, what would you consider some of the challenges and opportunities?
Well, we like community engagement. We like the idea of getting the community involved as much or as little as you'll allow us to. We always think to get everybody on board is always important, regardless of the project's going to referendum or already has been. That's a piece that we want to be a part of and like to be a part of. We like that involvement with the community. We do a lot of community work, as Dave expressed. So not that that's a challenge, but it's definitely something that we want to incorporate into this. Yes, the money is going to be by far your #1 challenge. The old buildings are interesting. We do a lot of work in old buildings. I'll speak for Ken, I think, is getting these new systems that are 2023 systems in a building that was built in the 20s and 30s. It wasn't designed to accommodate these systems. You can imagine that's a bit of our challenge. And that's true with everything you see. And we really pride ourselves in injecting these new mechanical and plumbing and electrical systems into buildings, but still having them look like what you're seeing on the screen, maintaining historic character and keeping the original homage or paying homage to that original building and keeping the original design intact, we feel is always an important part of the project. And it will be a challenge. It will be a challenge if the goal, and I think and hope it's the goal, is to keep the building's original spirit, but obviously bring it up to contemporary standards. Marrying those 2 is always a challenge. And again, we do mostly renovation work to existing buildings. You're seeing a lot of them today. It's a challenge, but it's a challenge our group revels in. It's what we do and what we like to do. So this really does fall right in our wheelhouse of the type of project, not only that the management likes, the leadership likes, but the staff likes to work on these types of projects. So we align the projects with what our staff is good at and what they enjoy doing. And this one is right in that wheelhouse.
And if I could speak, just real
Yeah,
quickly on the site, I mean, these are site issues that we deal with on every single project. So there's nothing I see here that can't be engineered, but the one thing I see is the parking. We want to work with you. We want to make sure we give you enough parking, but we don't want to overdo the parking because there's a limited amount of space. We don't want to encroach onto those fields. We want to leave space right around the building for beautiful placemaking. That's just one thing on the site that I see.
So for instance, we're showing 67 cars and no one told us, where we're right now designing and thinking in a bubble in the vacuum. No one told us that's the right number or not. So that's something that Will and I are going to want to address real quickly and hash out that site and kind of get the general layout of where everything needs to be. I don't really, like Will said, I don't think it's a challenge, but there's definitely some obstacles and hurdles to get over.
And I think lastly, just with these buildings, the opportunities are kind of hidden gems. And we've shown you just certain design elements that can be restored that really just makes a drastic difference in terms of the image of that building. So right now you're looking at it, there's sort of a luster over the whole thing, but the bones of that building is still in incredible shape. They built buildings the right way back then. Can we polish it in enough and sort of reveal those hidden gems. I think those are the opportunities on buildings like this that really make it a key, important part of the community.
So we've all, this is something we hear a lot. It's like, we've got a strict budget. And I think something that this group, this is not, just so you've got some context, this is not the same group that did the initial design work. This building committee was newly formed. We were all blank slates, if you will. So if you come to us with a different idea than what was put forward in front of the other group, we're not gonna know the difference. We're gonna go, oh, we're gonna judge every idea on the merits of that idea. And one of my concerns, I've heard from other building committee members as well, is that we put a ton of money into this building and we end up with a building that looks like an old school. And we don't want to have you walk into the building and feel like I'm walking down a classroom hallway and now here's a classroom, and now here's another classroom, and here's the cafeteria. Like, we want it to feel like a community center. So I'm curious, what are some of the ways in which you can take a school building like this that's got some of those elements, wide hallways, uniform rooms spread throughout that basically just held desks. Like, what are some of the ways that you make that type of a building into the feeling of a community center?
Yeah, well, hopefully we demonstrated some of that, blowing down walls, opening up those corridors, even the use of materials. You know, this will go back, Dave, you know, that, go to the one, the multi-purpose room, right there. That room on the right, that was a former classroom. Well, that was actually 3 former classrooms.
It was actually once the gym
Yeah.
in
so,
1927.
Right, it was the gym that was converted to classrooms that we converted back to this multi-purpose room. So I think, at least the way I see that image, it doesn't have the imagery of a classroom anymore. The scale of it, the size of it, the fenestration in the ceiling, the use of the materials, nothing about it reads like a classroom. And I think that's where, you know, you have a limitation of the structure of the building. Unfortunately, your corridor walls are going to be, need to be maintained because they are a structural component to the building, but it doesn't mean you can't take away some of those openings and make larger openings through that wall. But hopefully we demonstrated, again, through blowing out walls, through use of material, through use of color, and of the use of the space, and how we fenestrate it with our architecture and lighting and such, that it doesn't have the imagery of a school. Again, I'll let you decide on our images today. You still feel like these look and feel like schools. Personally, I don't think they do. So it's a careful maneuver, watching your budget. Because every time we blow large openings through those corridor walls, we're gonna have to structure it, reinforce it, put in steel beams to carry the loads above, because those walls aren't load bearing. And we can do it, but it all comes down to priorities and money. I mean, to be real honest with you. So we always have the conversations with our clients. Where do you want to spend that money? Do you want to spend it blowing through openings through the corridor wall and putting in steel beams? That'll be 10, 20,000 a pop. Or do we want to put that 20,000 elsewhere? And that's a decision that we make, and we make thousands of them with.
Thank you.
Do you feel like that is that is realistic within the budget that we have set to do this type of work where you sort of?
I think what you're seeing in these images are realistic, but your architect and engineer is going to need to be very creative and careful. Your budget is going to be, I'll say the third time, your biggest challenge.
Thank you, AJ. Any follow-up on that? Elaine,
I'm gonna pass.
go around, Joe?
No, Joe, you guys go first.
So I saw some of your slides, 30/60/90 internal review. If you walk through, how do you see that happening? And how do you reconcile the needs and wants of this committee and the public during the design phase of the project?
Well, I'll talk about the 30/60/90, and then maybe Dave will pile on the back end. That's the natural break of phases that we architects and engineers live with. It's called schematic design development and construction documents. Schematics is 30, design development is 60, and CDs are 90. It's kind of the magical stopping points that our industry for 200 years has always used. It's what contractors use, it's what construction managers use. They want to, there's got to be a stopping point to say, okay, is this project in line with what it wants to be programmatically? And is this project in line from a financial standpoint? And those are the times that you kind of say, okay, we stop as a team, make sure we're on track, we make sure you're happy with it, we make sure that the budget is in line, and if everyone's happy with it, we'll actually ask for your approval to go to that next phase. Only then will we proceed to DD. We do it again at CD. We internally have a review with typically one of the leaders of the firm who is not on the job. We like another set of eyes. You know, you've all been there. You can write the same, you know, you have the same problem in a sentence and keep reading it over yourself and not see that you missed the comma, right? But if you give it to somebody else, they usually pick it up pretty quickly. So it's the same logic. We like somebody who is familiar with the job but not familiar with the drawings to do a quality review in that 30, 60, 90 before it proceeds. So that's how we manage that portion.
The 60 phase is the most important phase out of the entire time. It's whether we're 50% or 60%, we're either half done or half undone, right? So we need to, at that point, we need to make sure that we've captured enough of the cost and enough of the work that's intended, that program that you've asked for is fully validated, that all the scope is outlined. We haven't solved all the issues, but the overlying items have been resolved, or at least we know what it's going to take to resolve them. So that 60% stopping point is an opportunity for us, the construction manager, you as the building committee, to spend enough time. And that's the one area that we'll say, give the time to it. Don't compress it, because it's the most important stage of the project is, are we meeting our goals? And this is the time that we could do it. From there on, then it's kind of behind the scenes for us to kind of make the details work. But the 60% is the most important phase.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
A quick follow-up question. Would you be proposing to bring a CM in during the process?
Our understanding was your plan was to bring a CM. If you were, you should bring him in. Our recommendation is to bring him in at that 60% time, mainly to do an estimate reconciliation with our estimate. They will also bring on the value of just constructability and also potential supply chain items. And that's where we've sort of pivoted over this last year and a half or so, is we've looked at the potential of onboarding or purchasing equipment early on, and they'll have that insight in terms of what can be maybe phased out, bid earlier, so we can at least get, even if we're 2 weeks ahead. Ken could talk about switchgear's like a year out. So if we could save a month, that's huge in terms of overall escalation. So the partnering with the CM, I mean, we can, this project is right on the cusp of a general contractor and can be done with a general contractor. Our understanding was the CM was being contemplated, so that's why we made that reference, but we will work in any capacity you as the committee feels best.
So if CM is coming on board, our recommendation is sooner than later.
Yeah, so you wouldn't bring him in at 30%?
It's okay.
Our recommendation and the trend is to get them in sooner than later.
It's a
Some
team effort.
clients want them in right at the beginning. Some clients hire them before the architect, believe it or not, that they're in for pre-design and that they're already checking the numbers and the estimates and the budgets. Years ago, they would come in at the end, right before construction, then it started, like Dave said, somewhere in the middle. Now the general industry trend is to get them in even sooner than the 60%. Early on in schematics is what we're seeing more common than not.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And
Okay, can you describe a problem that you encountered during a similar project and how you ended up resolving it?
Were there any problems, Ken? That's put you on the spot.
It's just conflict resolution. Maybe you want to talk about just interface and trying to.
Yeah, we do everything nowadays in 3D BIM, building, integration on a computer. So we build a model, and a lot of the stuff gets resolved that way because we know what kind of space we have to work with and design in. And we detect clashes. We can, make changes that way. We know where everybody is in an active model situation. So The only thing that we're probably gonna be up against is the existing structure that never anticipated having HVAC. And it's daunting, but we've always been able to overcome it. So it's just a matter of, making the adjustments. We work with the architects to conceal things. We, work with the structural people to reinforce things. But it gets done, and it gets done as a group. We all kind of agree with it.
Yeah, to be more pointed, I can't recall any, maybe Dave will, I can't recall any major issue, but I can recall about 300 minor issues on our project. I mean, minor issues are just a daily occurrence, so we don't really consider them, a major topic to discuss at a presentation, but it is a process to put a building together. And we can do only so much to model that existing building accurately, but you have concealed ceilings and we don't always see every little component. And sometimes it does happen that the duct can't fit where we're showing it, and it needs to slide over 6 inches, which moves the light fixture and moves the sprinkler head. And there needs to be this subtle adjustment in the field. And that's really where I think our firm shines. Again, our integrated practice allows us to do that quickly, efficiency. If I have to send 2 engineers and an architect out to look at a field condition because the contractor says there's a conflict, I can get them all out there in an hour. And again, having consultants, that's not always as easy, but having them in-house, it's our staff. We can tell them to stop what they're doing, run out to this project and let's solve the problem. And then they go back, they remodel it, and they produce a sketch to the contractor, and then he's on his way. That is literally a daily occurrence in what we do. So Dave, I'm not sure if you.
Yeah, I mean, as Dean said, over just our experience over these years has taught us that you're going to have some conflicts, conflicts with systems, new systems tied into old. We can't see it all, but what we can do is build into our documents certain allowances that tell the construction manager, if we encounter this condition, provide value in your bid, and here's a solution that you need to address it. Even if it's just a unit price that says we're going to need to remove X amount of brick because we're going to hit a brick wall, we will anticipate that. So that's kind of the lessons learned over the years, is what may you encounter and build it in, as opposed to just waiting to solve it when it comes in front of you. That's the difference. That's a change order. Either way, it's an added cost to the project, but one is built into it initially. One is just an added cost. And maybe it's just just a mindset thing of kind of how you're dealing with changes. But that's the way you address these type of things. And we've learned to adapt it more managerially than anything else.
And Dave, if I may, on the site side, project like this has its own set of challenges because there's pre-existing conditions. There's constraints and restraints already built in. A couple of things that we'll look at. One is we know we have to provide ADA access to that building from the parking lot. That's something we have to do on every project. And if you're not, you've got an existing building and existing land next to it, it's not always very simple to get it right up. So that's a challenge that we'll overcome. And another one might be controlling costs. We've got a really old parking lot there. We'll look at the existing base material. Is that in sufficient condition that we can reclaim in place and reuse that as a part of the new parking lot and perhaps save you some money? So those are a couple items that we might look at on the site.
Thank you. In your final minute, convince us that we should pick you.
Well, I hope we did it in the last 30, 40.
What would you like to leave us?
What I'd like to leave with you is that you see by our experience of what we've demonstrated to you. We're a firm that's 32 years young and continuing to grow. And our experience, I think, is demonstrated in the work that we do. It really focuses in on this project. And what we enjoy doing, and Ken mentioned it, it's talking about renovation is really sustainability. So these are the projects that we practice and we enjoy doing. And with that, we feel we'd be a perfect partner to you to be a part of it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very enlightening. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good luck with the process. You got a long day ahead.
It's just, another- we're all volunteers, it's just another work day. Just a different venue.
Nice to meet everyone.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for taking my calls. It was
Yeah.
very, very helpful.
Did you have those?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, well, no, I forwarded that along to our surveyor, but also I'm talking about helping through the process, like the commissions and the dates.
We know all about Bob.
Yeah, Bob's on vacation. Yeah.
Drawings.
When we go, I heard
Yeah,
someone mention
yeah.
it last night. When are we going to the P and Z?
Yeah, you bet.
We're targeting applications for both.
Has it really? I've been out of town for 30 years.
All right.
You guys a little bit.
Yeah. I saw him at I think.
Take care, Bart. Thank you.
Thanks, good to
Nice
meet you.
presentation.
Yeah.
Good day.
Exactly.
Does Slavic work with you? Yeah, tell him Dave Spurley said hi. I used to work with him at LC Associates back in the day, before we used to support the fee with Friday.
We really should have planned this better.
Yeah.
And they said.
Not bad timing for the first.
Okay.
All right, it showed up in P and Z. I'm gonna let them go in room B.
Mark, did you want to?
No, I just, now would be a good time, if you wanted to share any thoughts before you jot down any scores or.
I did not get the questions, there was no time for the real question I wanted to ask him. And that's the point that we didn't come to this point easily in the town.
So we
And
have values.
how specifically, or what was their experience in bringing a town that may be divided as we go forward into, maybe that's our job is to do that, is to bring the town together. But do they have any experience in doing that? And how could they help us with the town? Presentations to the town, and I don't know what else they might have done in the past.
So that sounds a lot like question 15 on the question list.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there wasn't enough time to get to that, so
But in terms of what you saw from a presentation perspective,
Pardon?
but in terms of what you actually saw from a
Well,
presentation.
I think they did speak quite a bit about the community involvement and kind of how they like to be part of the community and look at the programmability.
Right.
And now with the new survey, I think that can help kind of focus the questions and ensure that we're doing, taking the current thought and process, because prior to that, obviously it was several years ago, and things have shifted a little bit, not a lot, but a
I
little
would have
bit.
liked to have them say that. I would have liked to have heard that from them.
I
To
think-
explain
I
what
think
more
they
than
did.
what they did.
Well, I think they showed their,
I think that came through.
I think it came through, because I actually noted that they have a matrix that they used, and it was, I really liked that thought process.
Okay,
Yeah, one of
So-
mine was community engagement, but then they.
they did have one slide on community engagement. All right.
Three, yeah, so.
Yeah, are we gonna be able to see these presentations? I mean, we'll
Yeah, we'll get copies of
we'll
them.
get copies of them on electronic?
Yep.
Is it gonna help us?
But,
Maybe.
Well, sometimes they
Well,
might hand
if
them
we're gonna
out,
make a decision today,
like hard copies.
well, that's,
the
you know,
email tonight.
the point, AJ, is we may come to the end and not be able to make the decision. If we come to an impasse, at some time in the night, and we just say, we're not gonna break this today, then we could actually make the decision another day.
Okay.
We can postpone that, should we come to an impasse at the end of the day.
It might be beneficial if we are close to a certain number to say, okay, let's go visit some of these places if they're close as well, just to get a visual ourselves on.
Or make a couple phone calls.
Or make a couple
Make a
more
couple
phone calls or something like that.
Or go over their presentations again, but it is not, we are not bound to make a decision today.
It's on the agenda, but.
Yeah.
So anything you liked or didn't like from the presentation?
I really liked them. I found them very comfortable.
So the personal chemistry
Yeah,
side?
I would rate them high that way. I didn't feel like they came with a whole lot of ideas specifically related to the Madison project. But, I mean, a few. I think their experience is really right up our alley, which I think is a benefit. And I think the fact that I don't really know all this building stuff. I know a lot of you do, I don't. But to me, having everything in-house gives them a little bit of a leg up, because I think it does give them some flexibility. I like that.
Like, you did the,
Eileen, my name's Eileen.
you did the,
You gotta get it right, Jim.
glasses. You did the reference check. Was there anything that came out of that?
What came out of that, I only got 2 of the people, I haven't been able to get replies from the other 2. Was that they really liked the people, that they were very responsive, that they called them back the same day every time they called. Nobody had any complaints about them that they were willing to share. Felix from the city of New London has been working with them on a conversion, and he can't say enough good things about them. To the point where he said probably the biggest problem with his project was the fact that he insisted all the subs, any subs they had, be local to New London, and even against their advice, he went with somebody, I can't remember who it was now, but he went with somebody, and that ended up being the only problem so far in the project, was that he didn't listen to their advice about, where to go with that. So I didn't hear anything negative about them at all.
You should hope, if you're giving a reference, you'd hope they'd be good, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing with references. People are very hesitant to say anything negative these days,
Right.
because it's, you don't get a definition.
So you have to actually gauge their positivity.
Yeah,
I mean, if
their
they're,
enthusiasm, right?
either they're damned by faint praise, or they're too effusive and they're going, they're hiding something.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to, somehow listen to the integrity.
So a question for you, Mark. Is it possible that the reason they're getting so much lower than the others because they do everything in-house? Does that help them in that way?
It could be part of it. I honestly think, Eileen, one of the biggest reasons could be is that you saw from their, initial thoughts, they just took the QAM plans and said, boom, here they are. I honestly don't think they're gonna change all that much from what we saw from the firm.
And that's what the first thing that stuck to me when he mentioned that was like, okay,
We're gonna work off the base that.
no, we already have concepts. Why don't we just keep what we have then if you're not bringing something new?
Right.
Right, to me then.
What I heard is that's a springboard, not necessarily married to that.
No.
No, but he,
So if we contracted with them, we contract with them for that price, and then we say, no, we're not happy with that. Then what happens then? And they say, well, we didn't budget to do.
No, they've got to come up with a concept that you all like for the budget that we have.
Okay.
And I might be the outlier here, but I didn't feel the chemistry with them. Not the first presentations. I mean, he was going through he wasn't talking to us. He was going through a script, and I guess I didn't feel the personal chemistry.
Well, I could echo that a little bit. I don't know if you noticed, but Dean almost never looked at any of us.
It's because I felt like they were looking directly at me.
I
so
did too, but I
Maybe
was
they were
sitting
just right next to me rather than.
They looked at us a lot.
Yeah.
We were sitting right here, staring at them.
So, yeah, that could just be presentation.
That seemed like part of him too, just his like demeanor as to.
I thought there was a good chemistry amongst them.
Yes.
And I think with having, all the skill sets in-house, especially having MEPs in-house, I felt they probably work well together within their office. I saw that as a benefit.
Yeah, even like.
With a renovation like this, where he did say, you're gonna have to move something 6 inches and that's gonna have effects, like, there's a lot of, you need a high bandwidth between.
Yeah, that thing about moving the sprinkler head, moving the light fixture, so now the light fixture's not centered, now the architect's not happy, but it's not constructible the way they want it.
Yeah.
Being able to resolve that in-house without a week delay,
Yeah, that spoke to me because
That's a lot.
that echoed something that I encountered quite recently in another project.
yeah, it happens.
It took weeks to resolve.
Right.
The one thing I would add, COVID brought on the aspect of not everybody having to work in the same office. So, I deal with this on a daily basis, probably Mark does too. We have submittals being sent out around the country to be reviewed, and we're getting quick responses back. It's not like the old days where you got to meet in person or send an email, have review. Using SharePoint sites, whatever, that's automatically being sent. As long as it gets to the right person that did the design that can review it, accurate, they can ship it right back. So, I mean, while the in-house probably is a benefit for last minute changes or quick changes, what do you keep 30-day review times on shop drawings? 15, 10? How much? 14?
14 days.
Sorry, so 14. I mean, you're gonna get it back within 14 anyway. You should.
Typically, unless they stop 40 of them at the same time.
Well, but that's a challenge of
When
any,
you just
but
hit field issues, that's different.
But that's a contract issue.
yeah, but if that's a challenge of being a consultant, right? You have to have enough work to keep everyone busy, but trying to manage it where you're not too busy, where you can't give the effort to whatever you're trying to review, right? I mean, it's kind of a challenge.
All right.
I also liked the reuse piece, you know, they really have had a lot of experience in taking school buildings and making them something different. I think that's a positive on that, and that it is partially a historic building.
Yeah.
These sections of it are very historic, and then you could argue that because it's still the same building, the entire thing is. So, but even though it's not on the registry, but it is part of the very historical portion of our downtown as well. So.
Maybe it's a very quick summary. I have to say we're split on the chemistry. The size and their ability to work well together is a positive, and their experience is a positive.
We gotta remember one thing, these are the same people that are gonna come in and give presentations to the town or, to try to sell points. So think about that in the back of our heads, right? They're gonna be coming, talking to other people, not just us. And how are they gonna present themselves to sell something to the town?
So why don't you go ahead and jot down, numbers, thoughts, notes, and then go to the next room and bring them in.
You're calling dibs on the same reviewer numbers?
Are we gonna, we're gonna do
Yeah,
same
yeah,
reviewer
yeah.
numbers?
Yeah.
And then, it's 1 to 10.
1 to
correct?
10, yep. And then after we're done with all 5, you can just send me the sheets. I'll go ahead and load it into the file and see what it spits out.
I couldn't find these here. I got the proposals.
These weren't there?
Did you grab them and scan them?
You took them when we opened?
Yeah,
took
were
the
there 2
envelopes?
copies of the fees or just 1 copy?
No, just one copy, one.
So maybe they're
copy.
back in my office. I'll go check.
We don't have them scanned, do we? Where we
I don't.
print them for
Yeah, I don't
everybody?
know. Yeah, I don't remember here if they scanned it. I'll go back to my office.
Okay.
I'll go back and see if there's another second. There's a pile of
I
stuff
didn't
there
think there,
that had nothing to do. There's 2 piles. There's these and
I thought they were in a sealed envelope.
Hi,
and
how are
they
you?
weren't any good.
Welcome. Oh, good morning. You're welcome to set the laptop over here.
Okay.
Morning. Joe Valentine, Chair.
Eric Evans, yes, but.
John Gray.
So as we forgot, we'll start. You have as much time as you want you're about approximately 20 minutes for the presentation.
Sure.
And then at somewhere around the 45-minute mark, we'll have some questions after the 45-minute mark. And I'll do what I'll do my best to keep us on that.
All right.
You and all of us on that.
you have a little storage piece in there. Yeah. I hope I don't need.
I can forget it really easily.
At the end of the day, I'll say, all right, man, counting on you. I put my phone in there, I'm not going anywhere.
Somebody goes to.
Joe, want me to kick it off?
Sure.
Okay. Well, good morning. Congratulations on making it to this next stage of the process. We're excited to have you here, hear from your firm this morning. As the invitation indicated, you got 30 minutes for presentation. I'll give you a 5-minute warning as you get closer to that. If you finish under, that's okay too. We'll follow it up with about 15 minutes of questions and answers. So what we'll do is we'll start by introducing ourselves and we'll get over to you. I'll start the clock and it'll be your show, okay? Perfect. So again, I'm Mark Sklang with Colliers Project Leaders for Legal Instruction for the project.
I'm Judy Denny. I'm also from Colliers. I'll be the assistant project manager on this project.
Joe Cardiso, town resident and sitting on the building committee.
Ann Kelly, town resident, sitting on the building committee.
Good morning, I'm Erin Mannix, the town planner.
Joe Valentine, in case you haven't noticed, we are a volunteer committee, all residents of the town, and I'm chair of the committee.
Dave Spraley, I'm the vice chair and also a resident.
Building committee member and resident. Ellen Walker.
AJ Miller. Also been in.
Eileen Davis, building committee and resident.
Great. Excellent. Thank you all very much for having us. We'll introduce ourselves as we get started a little bit, but just wanted to say, we really thank you for having us. We appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation with you this morning. You have a great project. There's a lot of potential and a lot of great opportunity, and we're really excited to be here. So what we're going to do today in this conversation is just sort of walk through a bit of an introduction. We'll talk a little bit about GWWO, about who we are, about what we do. Hopefully expand a little bit on what you saw in the paper materials that we provided to you. Then we'll talk a little bit about how we do our work, a little bit on process and some of the tools that we have to make sure that we deliver good, successful projects. We're just going to touch on 2 case studies. It is a pretty short time frame this morning, so we're just going to touch on 2 and then spend a little bit of time sharing a few initial thoughts on the project here. So I am John Gregg, principal at GWWO. I have spent the majority of my career working on historic structures, and especially like when we have an opportunity to do an adaptive reuse and give a historic building a new purpose. So this is right up my alley. I will serve as principal in charge for the project, which means I will be actively engaged from start to finish.
I'm Kate Skurlock. I'm a senior associate at GWO and an architect, and I'll be part of the team helping with design and collaboration. I also have spent, well, not as similar to John, but I've spent my career working on cultural projects and some education projects as well. So anything from nature centers, community centers, visitor centers, as well as some traditional K-12 education projects. So really excited to be here today.
Hi, I'm Matt Ames. I'm an associate with GWWO. I would be the project manager for us on this project, which means I'd be your day-to-day contacts. I also have a lot of experience in rec centers and education projects throughout my whole career.
And then I'm Eric Ebring with CES, so I'm an associate and team leader with CES, which is a mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection engineer. So I'll be the main point of contact and project manager for my firm on this project. And we've been in business since 1994 and have done many projects like this all over Connecticut and all over the Northeast. And similar to what John said, you know, adaptive reuse and how do you fit new MEP systems into an existing building? That's the kind of challenge that we love, and we've done a lot of over the years. So we're excited to potentially work on this with you.
GWO is a 60-person firm. We are headquartered in Baltimore. We have a local office in West Hartford. We were founded in 1990 and have spent the majority of our time focused on cultural and educational work. So this project it really is exactly what we do. We've had the privilege of working on more than 325 projects in the community and rec center space. So all of the spaces and functions that you're looking to include in this project, we have a vast amount of experience working with. Similarly, we've worked on more than 200 historic projects over the course of our time. We have active and ongoing contracts with the National Park Service, with Smithsonian, and have truly been honored to work on some of the most significant historic structures in the country.
So as John mentioned, we have a narrow focus on cultural and education projects. And that means that the architecture, for us, we believe that it really can inspire learning and enrich learning. We work in what's called a story-based design approach. So the design goal for all of our projects is that the whole project relates to the project's context, whether that's historical, cultural, or physical. So a few examples of how we've done that across those markets, whether that's embodying the Star Spangled Banner at the Fort McHenry Visitor Center and Education Center, or the Visitor Center at the summit of Pikes Peak in Colorado, where the building is carved out of the mountain, and providing unobstructed views towards the mountain, much like Edwin James, the first man to summit, or Catherine Lee Bates, who wrote the song America the Beautiful, which was inspired by this view, would have experienced. At Robinson Nature Center, the building's nestled into the landscape, interpreting the site through its materials and form. And the architecture and exhibits in this case really come together to interpret the forest from the tree canopy to the forest floor. Frederick High School, which was a replacement high school, the building really looks to honor the tradition and the beloved original building while providing flexible daylit spaces for learning and collaboration inside. At Ralph S. O'Connor Rec Center at Johns Hopkins, this building really starts to celebrate the movement and energy that's inside and transform the dark existing gymnasium into bright open gym space. Cahill Recreation and Community Center. This building really reflects both its setting and its community. It's clad in, the exterior is completely clad in reclaimed wood from Baltimore City and local sites. And the building really becomes enveloped in that site. And a unique feature of the interior is a theater space, which is very atypical for this client to include in their community centers, but was a really strong desire of the community. And so there was great collaboration to make that happen for that community. As John mentioned, we also have a long history of working with and designing facilities within the historic context, and specifically working with National Register Historic Districts. Our preservation and rehabilitation at the Brafferton, at the College of William and Mary. This building was built in 1723. Its claim to fame is it's the second oldest American collegiate building continually active. You have to have like 12, superlatives there to be great, but it was very old. And while it had been kept in really good shape, the systems were failing. And we were able to renovate that structure to kind of really allow it to continue its use into the future. We recently completed a historic restoration of the Jefferson Memorial in Washington, D.C. Very detailed process was involved to remove the biofilm. You can sort of see the black scum on the top of the dome and the after now that it's been cleaned. And we're also working on some interior renovations and ADA upgrades to the memorial. Renovations of the New Carrollton Library transformed a dated and dark brutalist building into one that was light-filled and really celebrates the existing triangulated structure. So all of those, it's just a kind of a snip, few examples of what our cultural and educational markets and focus allows us to really be engaged in. And so across those various things, we have a lot of expertise in many of the building spaces, types of spaces you might be considering here, from theater performing spaces of all scales, more large to more informal, black box spaces. We understand the need for education spaces of all types and what those might entail. So things like maker spaces or labs geared towards children, as well as your more traditional type classroom settings. We have experience with cooking spaces, from the cooking side of things to the eating side of things. And we really understand the need for community space and gathering spaces that are flexible, but intentional in their incorporation of things like technology. So larger spaces meant for accommodating, up to 150 people in this case, versus much more intimate community meeting style gatherings, all the way down to one-on-one spaces meant for personal meetings or counseling. And obviously a major trend currently is incorporating multi-generational spaces, so welcoming spaces for teens and the youth, and how do you kind of engage those in spaces that might also engage in the elder population. Informal gathering spaces of all sizes and scales can really help to make buildings sing. And we work in all of our cultural markets, and even in the K-12 world, often we're telling a story that's larger than just the architecture and the new interventions. And so here you see an example of how we incorporated historic objects and also panels into the lobby space of this building. We also understand recreation spaces, whether that's for exercise or wellness, and certainly including gymnasiums that can accommodate multiple sports. You can't make a gymnasium now that doesn't have pickleball courts, because that's all the rage. And of course, outside the walls of the buildings, we also have experience in incorporating outdoor spaces, from nature play spaces to more destination playgrounds, collegiate sport fields, but also your community stadiums. So again, those are all sort of really quick examples to give you a feel for the breadth of our work, but all of those projects became successful projects because of our series of process and tools, and Matt's going to walk through those.
Thanks, Kate. So yeah, how do we achieve all of what Kate just showed you? We have it's raw talent as part of it, But we also have a number of processes and tools that help us. Some of them are even custom built tools that we made in-house that help us do good design, lead to smooth construction, and ultimately give you guys a better project. And for us, it really starts with engagement and communication. That's got to be number one. So for stakeholders like you guys, that's making sure that, my role as a project manager, if you go, I'm available all the time. You call, I'm there to answer your questions, help you make the right decisions. On the community side, it's all about engagement. I know you guys have, some of that has started with the community engagement. That's something that definitely we would continue. And to us, it's more than just, a public meeting. It's interactive workshops, it's online surveys to really, ultimately what we want to do is we want to listen. We want to hear what the community has to say and listen. So we take what we hear and we start using some of our tools. We have a benchmarking database that includes square foot sizes and number of occupants that could be served for all types of spaces from all the projects that we've done. It's all been compiled down into a database that helps us make the right decisions about what, how to right size programmatic elements. And we can take that information, start using some of our programming tools that helps us start evaluating adjacencies and priorities. And again, it's all about helping you guys make the right decisions. And, for this project, given that it's an existing historic building, we highly recommend doing what's called 3D laser scanning and creating, it's called a point cloud. And what that basically means is, traditionally you could go out with a tape measure and you can take a bunch of photos. I've done that. You get back to the office, you miss something, you've got to go back out. With the 3D laser scan, it sees everything, it measures everything. If I have a question, or if you had a question about, what is the distance here, or is this wall even in plane, you can immediately see that in the point cloud. Everything's recorded. All the information is right there at your fingertips. And we have a lot of experience in taking these point clouds and turning them into 3D models that we can use as part of our documentation and design process. So ultimately, we take that existing condition information, we combine that with our designs in 3D, and that allows us to really dig in and understand, okay, how is our design functioning with this existing building? Where are going to be our pinch points, the tight points that we need to evaluate and look into further. We use a piece of software called Revisto that allows us to very easily spin around, fly through the building in 3D, see where those points are, tag issues, and feed that information directly to our consultants, such as Eric.
Great segue. Yeah. So just continue on this topic of tools. We're an integral part of the team with GWWO, and we use the exact same tools from the 3D modeling to the clash detection and the point cloud. So we use the point cloud as well, and in addition to our field work. And I'll say that the two supplement each other. Point cloud doesn't get you away from doing that good old fashioned field work, putting your eyes on things and measuring things, but it's kind of the next step that leads us to what I'm going to be focused on for this project, which is, how do we get newer mechanical systems, newer electrical systems into this building in a way that's going to work with the existing building, the structure. And so the point cloud in our field work, even before we get into a lot of detailed design work where we're running ductwork through the model or piping, seeing the building holistically, again, field work, photos, and a point cloud, we start to see, where are the limitations, but also where are the opportunities of where ductwork could be run, or other areas of the building where maybe it couldn't be run. So we start to see that early on, and it helps us select systems, whether we see we can put units on a roof in one area of the building or not, and maybe we need to put them at grade. So all of that early level information really helps us get everything right the first time, so that we're not, doing expensive rework or God forbid change orders in construction down the line. So the other point about right sizing and selecting systems properly and is another big goal for you, I think, and we'd like to discuss this further with you to analyze priorities. But sustainability is a part of every project that we do these days, whether it's a major focus or it's just in the background. And we look forward to hopefully teasing that out with you and understanding where on the priority list it falls here. But it's something that we think about from the beginning. And again, selecting the right system, zoning things in such a way all ties back to how well, how efficiently the building is going to run. So we think about, especially for a community center, there might be an area of the building that wants to run for more hours than other areas of the building. So if we select a smaller standalone system for that building. It means that you don't have to run a larger system, for an extra 8 hours a day just to serve a small space. So that all ties into using less energy, and it's really not doing anything extra. We're just doing our job, right sizing systems, zoning them properly. And then in addition to that, we look at, the big trend right now is electrification of buildings. We're trying to get off of fossil fuels, slowly, I'll say in a sensible way. Because electricity, we can offset it with photovoltaic, with renewable electricity. So whether that's a day one goal for the project or a future goal, if we can use, more electricity essentially to run the heating systems of the building, it allows you to offset that in the future. Whenever you burn fossil fuels, you can't really unburn fossil fuels. So again, that's a consideration. Balancing that with the use of a community center. And again, we don't know if this is a defined goal of yours, but often community centers are places where the community can go in the event of like a large scale outage. So if people are without power for a number of days, they don't have a generator at their house, they can come to a local center like this that maybe does have backup power. The heat's on, there's lighting, they can plug in their phones and charge. And so in that case, balancing sustainability with practicality, we may want some sort of fossil fuel, whether it's a backup boiler or generator. So thinking about those things. But these are all, goals and priorities that we hope we can discuss with you, very early on in the project. We're fortunate enough to work.
Let's start. So ultimately, we take all of what Eric talked about, sustainability, 3D coordination, all of our tools, and that pipeline, it continues. So, whether it's, I can do quick sketch renderings at my desk, or looping in our graphics department to do some of the photorealistic renderings you see on the top there. It's all in aid of, making good decisions and helping you guys understand, as stakeholders understand, what it is that we're designing. And it's ultimately, it's part of our day-to-day process. It's not something that's separate from our pipeline. It's just how we work. Finally, all of this feeds into our quality control process. Whether it's design or coordination issues or just the quality of our documents, we're constantly performing quality control. We have a dedicated QC coordinator that oversees the process. We're doing reviews are being done by construction specialists, senior staff, principal in charge, project manager, continually throughout the process so that we can make continuous improvement. We learn from our mistakes and we don't make mistakes again.
Yeah, quality control extends to everybody on the team. It's really important to us and should be really important to you to make sure that we deliver a good and successful project. It's not just about the documents and documentation though, it actually applies to cost and cost control as well. So we do have a cost estimator on the team and they'll support the project in terms of cost estimates for initial construction costs. We also have an in-house database. We've collected information from our projects and other projects and use that, as Matt has said, to help inform decisions and the decision-making process for you guys throughout the course of the project. So whether we need to talking about potential bid alternates or future phases or how we're going to make decisions on priorities and which things fit in, we have some of our own internal tools to inform that throughout the course of the design process. And all of that has led to, over the course of our history, less than 1% errors and omissions due to change orders for the project. So we are proud of that and make a point of that. So that's it sort of through process. We'll talk just again about a couple of case studies. The first one is the Rita Church Community Center. This project started with a historic pool pavilion that was really in pretty awful shape. It was nearly falling down. We spent a fair amount of time meeting with the community, trying to understand how we could turn this derelict pavilion into a community center that would have spaces that they would use and appreciate. So ultimately, we came to some conclusions and we're able to renovate, rehab, adaptively reuse this building. And I think the end result looks better than it maybe ever did before when it was a pavilion. Inside, we were able to incorporate a community space in the middle. It was sort of collective that then had multi-purpose rooms, game rooms, classrooms, multi-purpose spaces that are used for meetings and events, even weddings. Off of that main community space, there's a kitchen that's used for educational purposes as well in that space. And the project was so successful that we were able to do the second phase of the project, which was the gym addition, which was another priority for the community, was to get gym space added to where this was. So That gym has a green roof and is active and used all the time. We were able to include some locker rooms and restroom spaces as well with that addition.
So the second case study we'd like to look at is the Chickweb Memorial Recreation Center. This project shares a lot in common with your project. It was a complete interior renovation of an existing historic structure, exterior rehabilitation. This project did also include an addition. And for those that don't know, if you're not a jazz aficionado, Chick Webb was one of the founding fathers of jazz in the 1930s. He was a band leader and a drummer. He was contemporary of Duke Ellington and Louis Armstrong. The singer in his band who he discovered was Ella Fitzgerald. One of his dreams was to give back to his native East Baltimore by creating a rec center, was something that East Baltimore didn't have at the time. Unfortunately, it didn't get done before he passed, but Ella Fitzgerald and his doctor, Dr. Young, sort of led the charge. It was the original part of the community center was fully funded by the grassroots community. So we knew going into this project that engaging with the community was going to be extremely important. Even the building's historic status it has that, it earned that through the local grassroots community. They were the ones that led the charge to have that happen. And many community members, learned to swim there. It was just, there was all sorts of fun memories in the communities we met with them. So we knew we had to embrace that. Even you can see this some of our notes from meeting with the community in the bottom left there, that's an image from the existing building, a exhibit that the community themselves have put together to sort of honor the legacy of Chick Webb. So all that, from listening to that, we knew we had to honor the legacy of jazz and the legacy of Chick Webb's life as we designed this building. So some of the ways we did that, it's our story-based design really helps us sort of bring that into the building. It's just part of our process. From on the right there, that's the left, that's the gym volume. You can see the pattern of the windows is abstracted musical note motif. You can see there's a music staff in the inlaid in the courtyard that has actual sheet music from one of Chick Webb's songs embedded into it. As we get a little bit closer, the colors in the main curtain wall and the play structures, that's pulling directly from the colors that Chick Webb used on his drum set. He had a sparkly green drum set with brass fittings and red wooden blocks. As we get inside the building, start to look at some of the architecture of how the lobby connects into the rest of the building. It becomes that central focus that directs you to everywhere else throughout the building. And you can start to see some of the exhibit design that we're working on. That's another area where we're engaging directly with the community to make sure we're telling the story of Chick Webb in a way that stays true to the community. Looking the other way in the lobby, we can start to see some of the technical challenges that was posed by that building. Because it's an existing building, much like your building, had a number of different levels. So we had to find the right place. This tower in the middle is the elevator shaft. Find the right place to put that to make the existing building and the new building fully accessible. It also had a very tight floor-to-floor distance. So we had to work very closely, constant communication and coordination with mechanical engineers to make sure that the systems didn't detract from the design of the building. And finally, I just want to share this image. This is the founder's recording studio. This is a space that wouldn't have existed without engaging with the community. It wasn't on our radar, it wasn't on the owner's radar, but through online surveys and engagement, we learned, this was by far and away the most requested space in the building. So that became part of the buildings program. Ultimately, I'm excited to say bids for this project came in under our estimate. It started construction, and I'm really, really excited to see it get completed.
Thanks, Matt. So hopefully, as you've seen, this is really exactly what we do, your project here. And we're really excited by the potential that this project has and all of the opportunities. The Academy School is rich with history, and its impact on the community of Madison is evident. It's obviously evident in that the community had overwhelming support for the project. So even as a visitor today, when I visited, and it's vacant, I can still sense that presence and it's, how it engages in the historic fabric is obvious. I love this map. You can see, obviously, the town green has been an important part of that fabric, and how the community of Madison has developed over time, and Post Road is also very evident even in this map. And so as we started to look at what opportunities there are for this project, you can see we started to map out that context now as it's developed over time, and that fabric is so strong still today. And what an amazing resource we have in terms of that. So we started thinking about how all of these buildings really front on Post Road, and how the community center has this great opportunity to really be sort of a bookend on the other side of the library from that downtown corridor, while also being that sort of transition into that real heart of the historic district. You know, and we know that this project has to both be really respectful of the historic context, but also be transformative in how it changes that building to really serve a new purpose and be the heart of the community. So again, these are just our initial ideas without having the benefit of being able to collaborate with you all, but we were struck by this idea that the building could really reimagine that front entrance and re-engage in Post Road and how it fronts on that main street. You know, through a careful sort of intervention at the entrance, we could see a great way to create both an accessible and equitable entrance into the main building that might lead to a central space. You see it being called entry hall. Maybe it's an entry hall, maybe it's a multi-purpose space, with the ability for other spaces in the building to connect and sort of simplify circulation potentially through the building. This is, you know, just a rendering, again, done in a vacuum without collaboration with you all, but we wanted to communicate this idea of what an amazing space this might be to be able to really serve as the heart of the community, right as you enter off of the main entrance. It is a space that could be flexible community use. Maybe there's a gallery on the left, you're sort of seeing a suggestion of that. Maybe it's local business space. The possibilities are sort of endless in terms of what could really start to activate that space. But it's a great way to centralize all of that and maybe simplify some circulation. And also there's a great opportunity for it to start to begin to tell the story of the building, the history of the building and its role in Madison, and also thinking about how it's going to continue that legacy into the future. So you're seeing a suggestion of maybe interpretive panels. There's a number of ways we could do that, but we wanted to just communicate that idea here in its rendering. So again, of course, this is something we'd love to collaborate with you on, but we just were struck by the possibility and what an exciting opportunity it might be to really reinvigorate that main entrance, open it up so that it's accessible for all, it's obvious where you enter the building, and really make that historic connection back out towards the Boston Post Road.
Yep, so with that, you know, that's the extent of what we intended to present. I want to just make a couple comments. Again, hopefully you can see through what we've shown, our experience and what we've presented in terms of initial thoughts that this project is exactly what we do, that we're really excited about the opportunity to have a conversation and continue forward working with you on it. You have committed some substantial resources to the project and have a really cool, impressive historic structure to work with. It is a big building, and we recognize that there will be some important decisions to be made through the course of the process. So again, recognizing that our role is to come to you with some possibilities, to share with you what the possible is, and we will bring you some really cool ideas, and then just make sure that we're presenting you the information that you need to make the right decisions as the project moves forward, right? So that this facility can become really an anchor that serves all the people of Madison for generations. So if you have any questions, we're happy to.
I'd like to take just 1 second to note that the 3 people here are not members of the committee. They're actually members of a previous committee. So they're public in our world. Yes, we did have some questions that we want to begin with, and we'll start at the other end of the room this time.
Okay, I'm wondering, can you please describe a problem that you encountered during a similar project and how you worked to resolve it?
Sure. There's always problems, whether they're relative to budget or relative to historic structures. You want to take one?
It's all right. I mean, Go ahead. We all have examples, but you want to talk about the challenge on Chick Web since they've seen the pictures.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is you know, there was the challenge with the elevator that I talked about, the challenge with fitting mechanical systems in the building. And both of those, you know, it's good design, it's communication and coordination. That's how we handle those issues on that project is taking the time to study it in, you know, in 3D and 2D and using all the tools that we have available to us.
Yeah, and the issues were the same on the research community center. I mean, the biggest challenge with existing structures is once you get in, you're gonna find something that you didn't expect. I mean, it is inevitable, right? And sometimes that could be a piece of something that's structural that wasn't expected to be structural. Sometimes it could be challenges between existing levels and how are we gonna make that work. The same was true on Rita Church, and our job there is to make sure that we're assessing and evaluating all the information, putting together what the cost impacts might be from that, presenting that information to the owner, and then sort of working to make the right decision on how we're gonna either change course in some capacity or make modifications so that we're, you know, not spending the budget on something that doesn't provide value.
Thank you.
Your focus on community engagement came through. I was wondering to go a little bit detail on what tools and you think you get the most bang for your buck out of in terms of reaching out to community and getting the information you need to calibrate your design.
Sure. So I'll start. I'll get you. Community engagement is different in every community, right? And I think that's one of the things that we have learned. And there are a lot of tools that are available. Making sure that we're providing information that is clearly communicated to the specific community is really important, and then finding ways to engage them. We know here you have already started that in some capacity, and we want to work with and build on that with the tools that we bring and the conversations that we'll have with the community. If you want.
Yeah, and I think
examples.
that the key in most cases is to use a number of different tools because different people respond to different tools in different ways. So early on, it might be, for example, a survey or an easy way to get quick information that helps inform our decisions, but allows us to be able to communicate that back so that when we meet with them at later stages, we can say, remember this question we asked, here's what we heard, here's what we did. I find that the best engagement is one where you can really be able to present the process that you went through because it helps people say, okay, they were thinking about my concerns, they were listening, and I understand their process and the decision that, you know, the collective group came to. One other tool that we use sometimes, and that's why I flip back to this image, you see it in this picture, is a VR headset. So it certainly comes later in the process, but sometimes that's helpful. In this case, the community was trying to really understand, well, what are you talking about? Like, what is this going to be like? And so we brought the headset and the community was allowed to put the headset on, sort of look around the space and sort of understand, oh, okay, I get this, and really get excited about it. So, you know, it's anything from surveys to gathering information, collaborative meetings where we're asking people to vote on things live, on pictures, to your traditional just listening sessions. But as you go along, it's really important to go back to that group and explain to them the process we went through and how we arrived at that based on their feedback.
You haven't really spoken much to the budget, and I'm wondering how you feel our budget is, how it would work with the concept that you.
Yeah, so, I mean, budget is always a factor, and as I said, we recognize that you guys have committed a substantial budget, $13 million, 15 total project costs is a lot of money. It's also a really big building, and there are a lot of needs. So I think there is a excellent project that can be completed for $13 million. And our important aspect for us is to bring you guys the ideas that will allow that to be a successful project. I do think there will be hard questions, there will be hard conversations, there will be prioritizing that needs to be done to make sure that we get to the best value and the right decisions. We'll have suggestions on whether or not that means, you know, bid alternates to give you some flexibility during bid time, whether there might be things considered future phases, where the highest priorities are, but just in the information you've already, you know, presented that we can find, recognize that you guys know that there are some hard conversations there and some priority decisions that'll need to be made. Some spaces in the building will be able to get more attention, some will have to get less, and maybe be, you know, further modified going forward, but.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I was curious about your ideas about the site as a whole, the 4-acre space, because you talked a lot about the building, but I didn't hear much about
any outdoor spaces or thoughts you guys had around that, so here.
So sorry. I was trying to go back to.
Yeah, so one of the things that we always include, I think it's really important that we have a landscape architect on the team, and we didn't bring Bob Goldie and his team with us for this conversation, again, sort of based on the type we know. But what we've talked to them about is looking at the site the same way that we look at the building and make sure that we are giving you guys a range of options to consider so that we can come to the right conclusion and then make some decisions. I think you have a fair amount of space, right? And one of the things that we've presented in what we've proposed is certainly looking at where the right place for the entry is. And I think that will inform some of the decisions that get made going forward relative to how the site is used to. But our intention would be to bring you a range of options during the schematic design phase to talk about the site and how best to use it and then how that stuff gets incorporated.
What do you view as the biggest challenges and then also the biggest opportunities for this particular project?
Sure. Want to take it?
Well, I think the biggest,
the ideas, but
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think the biggest challenge is going to be managing the, the wish lists that are always really long against the budget. It's a challenge on every project. There's very few projects where we get to work on that have unlimited budgets. So it's a real thing that we work with, every day. But I think that's going to be a challenge, and there's an additional challenge. I hate to call it a challenge because it's such a resource of an existing building that needs upgrading across the board, but that really is also the opportunity, the way we see it. The most sustainable building is the building that's already built, it's there, and it's a resource with so much history. So for us, that's the opportunity. How do we transform that building, make it sing for the community such that people that maybe went to school there, or have family members who went to school there, come back and say, look at this great resource that the town invested in that is now community space. It's such a great spot within the fabric. I certainly didn't understand that until I saw it in person too. And I think that there's so much potential there. So your building is both the challenge and the opportunity in a lot of ways.
I mean, you answered that almost exactly the same way I would. There are times where the community engagement is the biggest challenge. I don't think we're envisioning that here. Like, again, you've already started it, and I think there'll be things that we can work through, but the existing building can pose issues. And it's really, it speaks to how we work though, right? And how you ask that question, because not every architect is going to come to you and say that our role is to help you guys have the information you need to make the right decisions based on those things that are hard challenges, right? We don't work in a way where we're going to come and say, hey, here's a really cool design. This is what you have to do. We're going to bring you a whole range of options, and we're going to talk about what the impacts are, the existing building, what the costs are if you want to do that, how this thing might weigh out or play against this thing, so that the community and all of the stakeholders can participate in making the right decision to execute a project that's going to be successful. So we'll work through all of those things, but there will be challenges for sure.
And I'll just add quickly to that, sorry, for my trade, because I know prices of everything are going up, lead times are going up, so we've been challenged. We can't take, a standard, quote unquote, standard design, there are no standard designs, but the way that we worked, 4 years ago is entirely different than now. So we're constantly vetting, different system options. This building is going to need new heating, new cooling, new electricals, in some form. We have to be really smart about how we do that and make sure that we're specifying equipment that is, as reasonable cost as we can get, still has that efficiency, but also flexibility. So the way that we think about that very early on, prioritize with budget and everything else is the challenge I'm going to have on this one, but I think it's doable. Very good.
You mentioned quality control during the process. What about construction? Could you elaborate a little bit about that?
Sure. It goes back to what Matt started talking about. Communication is really important. We are always actively involved through construction. Communication with the contractor and construction is important. Producing a quality set of documents when we get it to them is important. But then if there are questions, and again, an existing building is going to have things come up even during construction that weren't identified during the design phase. The project that showed up, Kate mentioned the Jefferson Memorial, which the lower level is under construction now. There are 2 or 3 things that have come up on that relative to site utilities and how they're impacted, or some structural members that are just outside of that style debate wall where the new ramp is going in that created some issues that we didn't know were there. So we're working very closely with the client, very closely with the contractor to work to find solutions so that those costs can be mitigated, right? So that any changes can sort of reduce impact. So we'll use all of our tools to work to avoid any sort of challenges and issues during construction to the extent possible. But with an existing building, there will always be questions. And then communication and engagement through that process is the most important for the whole team.
And our QC coordinator who coordinates making sure that the QC process is followed through on all of our projects in-house is also our sort of lead construction administration individual. She's got a tremendous amount of experience in the construction phase. So those kind of come together hand in hand where our project manager and our team continue to be involved through construction. We also have that added layer of the construction team in-house that's helping to make sure, you know, the right processes are followed and the solutions are discussed and delivered as quickly as possible.
It's a good point. We do, the way we operate, we do have a handful of construction specialists in our office that focus on that, and they are a distinct part of our quality control process so that they're reviewing our documents from a constructability standpoint to help avoid any of those potential issues. But that's all integral to the way we work. And then it comes down to communication in all of this forms.
Are those individuals local to Connecticut or are they from your Baltimore office?
Those are in Baltimore. Yeah.
So what do you have for staffing in your Connecticut office?
So right now our office is in West Hartford. Kate is there full time and we're actively engaged in working to hire more staff up there. We have 2 to 3 of us that are up here on a fairly regular basis, depending on what we have for project work, and are committed to make sure that we're up here in any capacity needed to make sure that the resources are here.
Thank you.
Yep.
Follow up to that, how often would you plan to visit the site during the construction process?
We can do that as often as is necessary. We are often engaged weekly or even bi-weekly. I was talking with Pat last night when we were having a conversation. There's a project that we did. I'll take this to 2 perspectives. We do have our local office, right? So we have people here and there's no challenge getting to the site for any of the team. They're all local. But we do work nationally. So you didn't see the project that we did in Florida, but there was a project where I was literally there every week during construction because actually, and that's part of the conversation. I was never outside. I don't even think I saw the beach once. Yeah, no. There was a time period where there were some challenges and the contractor ran into some issues and the owner was exceptionally busy and they engaged us to provide an additional level of service. And so we did that. Between me and one of our construction specialists, we were literally there 2 to 3 days a week.
All winter long, right?
It was actually July, August, September, and October, so no. But, yeah, but so we're certainly able to provide any level of resources that we need to. And I don't, that shouldn't be something that has any sort of concern. We'll absolutely be here as much as is necessary, without any challenge. Yeah.
At of course, the wrap-up question. What would you like to leave us with that would make us pick you over the other participants?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I we talk about this a lot. It's always a good question. Not every client asks that question at the end of the interview, but if you wouldn't have chosen firms to interview today that aren't capable of executing this project for you, right? So it comes down to wanting to work together and how people communicate and how people work together. And that's one of the emphasis of our team, right? You've heard me say several times that our role in this is to be experts for you, to come with great ideas, to provide great information and make sure that you're informed to make right decisions. We are really good designers. We are really good communicators. We have a lot of experience with this project type and with historic structures, and we have the energy and expertise to deliver this project for you. We really think you have a great opportunity. So we're excited to have this conversation and then continue to have more conversations.
Thank you. Good answer, buddy.
All set?
Okay.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you.
I'll go.
Only one person.
Take a brief recess. Yeah, I'm gonna pause then.
Okay, yeah.